Welcome back. My name is Bill Moore, and the name of the program really is Atheists Say the Darndest Things. Now, the reason I'm repeating that is today I'm going to try to explain to you that there's a war going on, and really at the bottom of this war is an atheist philosophy versus a Christian philosophy. You may not subscribe to that notion now or after I'm finished explaining it to you, but I've subscribed to that notion. And I want to ask you, if you're a Christian, if you actually have made a commitment to Christ that incorporates this idea of being a soldier in a war. It's a war between ideologies, as I said, and it's also a war between factions in a culture. Now, I will try to explain to you that as a man thinks, so is he. In other words, every time I have an idea about Christianity, it's a call to action in some way. And if you are an atheist, you have an ideology that's a call to action. You should want to snuff out, as Richard Dawkins does. It's normal to me that he says he wants. He says he wants to snuff out all Christianity or all religion. He's just being very logical about his beliefs. So I don't mind going to war against Richard Dawkins, for instance, because it seems rational to me that he acts like he does, knowing how he thinks. And it should be, when you see me, it should be rational to say, well, that Christian is obviously ready to go to war against the culture. Because today, my wife and I find that most folks just wonder what happened with the world. And I'm going to try to lay out a plan for you that says this is the way the world really works. You're mad at the politicians. I'm mad at the politicians. You wish they were better human beings. So do I. You wish they weren't so duplicitous. So do I. Even if you're an atheist, you're tired of politicians, no doubt about it. If you're a Christian, you don't know how you got these folks elected. You don't feel like you're responsible for it. And here's how I'm saying that you are responsible for it. You want to complain to me about the politicians. I'm saying to you, that's low-hanging fruit. The world really works like this. See if you can be persuaded of this. The politicians are the fruit of the culture. In other words, as the culture changes and allows for more, let's say, bad behavior or half-truths or those kinds of things, you're going to get politicians who mirror what the culture will tolerate. The culture is now tolerating all sorts of. Think about this. You get information, and you're always complaining that you get bad information. What you mean by that is there's different kinds of information. Information ought to just be factual, right? Even if it's well-meaning and turns out to be less than actually factual, you can tolerate that. But what you're getting today is either misinformation by the boatload, meaning if you don't believe that, just watch CNBC or, one of those channels for 5 minutes and you'll hear the most biased reporting. You'll find stories that run counter to their beliefs or just not run at all. I mean, all of those things that you're aware of, finally. We've only become aware of that, if you think of it, in the last 4 years. So it's become evident that we don't have the sources we once had. You expected trustworthiness. Now you distrust them the minute you do, and good for you. You should be thinking critically about these things. But I'm saying that because when you have this other little thing that's new to this age, really, I think, and that's disinformation. So you have information, misinformation, now you have disinformation. Well, what is that? Well, that's when they purposely mislead you. They purposely mislead you. Now, that is how the tie-in goes, in my mind, to the politician who's the product of the culture. This is a culture of disinformation. Well, who's the mouthpiece for it? That politician. Okay? Now, you want to be mad at the culture then? No, you don't want to be mad at the culture, because the culture is downstream from the church. Okay? So here we have the church up here, then we have the culture. Because the church has failed, the culture fails. Because the culture fails, we end up with what? The politicians you complain about. Okay? They're second rate, they're ill-informed, whatever else. They're all of those things. There are a few exceptions, but in the main, all you have to do is turn on a Senate hearing and listen to a handful of them, and you'll be just amazed at their lack of understanding. Chief among them, of course, AOC. If she were here, I would say the same thing to her, because she certainly couldn't pass a high school equivalency test on history or anything like that, or politics. But nevertheless, she's not the only one to scorn. There's people on the right who say what I would call just the most ignorant things sometimes, and you're just staggered by it. You're thinking, how did this person ever graduate from some institution they called of higher learning? I'm saying all that because I want this hierarchy to be in your mind. The church failed. We got the bad culture as a result. The culture then fails, and we get the politicians you're mad at. Don't aim at the politicians. Don't aim at the culture. If you're a Christian, you aim at the church. And then I'm going to add the top of that little ladder. And it's going to start like this. In the early 1900s, the London Times ran a sort of a question that you were supposed to answer by writing back into the newspaper. And it says, what's wrong with the world? Very good question. I wish I'd do this today. What's wrong with the world? After about 2 weeks of reading all different kinds of replies, G.K. Chesterton, who was a very bright man, just simply wrote back into the London Times and said, my good sir, I'm what's wrong with the world. And I'm saying to you, if you're a Christian, the reason the church has failed is you and I have failed. You and I are responsible for the politicians that we have today. Why? You and I have stood by for 50 years and let some cheap grace Christianity infect all of Christianity. We could have put it out when it began. We chose not to. We were satisfied and self-satisfied is what I mean with the progress of the church. It's going to be a Christian culture. Listen, to have a Christian culture, you have to have Christians. You can't have half-baked pretenders who are Christian, because that's what we wound up with. In our effort to make Christianity accessible, what we did was make Christianity cheap. And that brings me to this war that I know we're in, and you don't have to believe this, but I see it everywhere. You wake up in the morning and you've got a view of the world that's so, what I call pedestrian, because I know I have the same view. I'm looking at everything around me as if this is all that really matters. When I know as a Christian it works like this. This world, I'm 71 years old, this world is so unimportant in the sense that lengthwise. There's an eternity out there that I was born for, and I'm going to spend in the presence of the Lord. That's what I know, okay, because I belong to Him. This is like I walked into a Holiday Inn room with my wife, and you know who was in there? A mariachi band, a couple of old Nazis, a couple of Baptists who aren't really Baptists even. And then you get people who are saying to you, well, I believe in extraterrestrials. And they happen to be scientists telling you that. They're all in the same room with you. And this is the world you live in, and it's chaos. And I'm saying to you, the only order in this particular hotel room at this Holiday Inn is that God is sovereignly permitting all these people to be in that hotel room. Because it's his world. It's his universe. I'm here. Here for a second. I'm literally here as a vapor. And so are you. And as a Christian, you're supposed to know that, and you're supposed to live accordingly. And so am I. And if you haven't figured this out, I'm really self-indicting today. Everything I say about you, I actually mean about me. And I'm questioning my commitment to Christianity. That's very important to me now. I've been a Christian for a long time. And certainly, if anybody thinks it's by faith alone, by grace alone, by Christ alone, it's Bill Moore. But here I am, and I'm wondering what kind of an account I'm going to give at the end of my time. So I'm saying I'm a Christian, stuck in this culture, and I've been asleep now for a long time, and now I've awakened to this idea that you and I are in the middle of a war. It's a battlefield, this earth, okay? And that's what you come to grips with that it's a battlefield or a gauntlet you're running through, or a wilderness that you're just spending here for a moment till you can get out of it. That's a Christian view of life. And somehow I've lost it. You know why? Because I've been, unfortunately, more successful in this world than I probably was good for me. I've managed to acquire a few things and a few luxuries, and pretty soon all of that good news became bad news for me because it made me miss out on the best news, which is my world is not this one. This is a transient world. My world is that one. If I'm right about that, you might have made the same mistake. So what do we do about it? First, we come to the recognition that there's a war between the church and the culture, and you're not afraid to fight it. You'll get the politician you want as the fruit of that when we make the change in the culture. But the church can't change though, right? Because the church only changes if I change and if you change. You tend to think, as people do today, that your group identity is being a Christian. No, your personal identity is being a Christian, not your group identity. That is incidental to me. I want to know what you think. I want to know how you act, because I know one thing. Your actions are the fruit of how you think. Don't tell me that you think like this and act differently. I'll know that you didn't mean what you said. It's illogical. A man acts according to his dreams. A man acts according to his hopes. He acts according to his fears. That's who you are. You need to be honest with yourself and quit telling yourself that somebody else ought to do something. You need to do something. I need to change, and I'm attempting to. And today's thinking is really all of the things that I'm trying to see if I really believe it, so I can hang on to these things, because I need to change. And you need to get ready to sign up and say to yourself, look, was I always a Christian soldier? When I converted, was I automatically a Christian soldier? And the answer to that is certainly. The second question is, have you acted like one? And the answer to that is probably no. Because you know why? I can tell when I meet you that you're complaining about the politician. You're not complaining about yourself and wondering why you haven't done something for Christ. See, that's what I'm wondering about Bill Moore. Why haven't I done these things? Why haven't I done these things more devotedly? Why have I interest outflanked his interest? See, I swore to him that his interest would be paramount. And now it turns out, really, I'm just a normal human being whose self-interest is sitting on the throne. And it's disturbing to me. And I intend to do something about it. I'm hoping that you can be moved to do something about your self-interest, to move it down to where it becomes no interest. If you leave your self-interest in his hands, I'm persuaded that you'll come out just fine. You need to pick up his interest and carry that with you with every breath, okay? Because there is a war to fight And the good news is you're on the right side of it. He will vanquish the enemy. The truth will, in the end, be the only thing left standing on the battlefield, as long as you do your part. So I'm also persuaded that there's a verse in 1 Corinthians 4, I think verse 17, it says, what do you have that wasn't given you? Paul's using it in the context of these teachers who are prideful about what they do. And I'm saying to you, it extends to all of you and to me. What do I have that wasn't given me? Think about it. Your intellect, given to you. That body of yours, given to you. The surroundings, providentially, God brought you into the family He wanted to bring you into. But the church I go to is bad. So are you. You need to transform that church from within. It's Christ's church. Your obligation is to transform that church. My pastor won't listen. Make him. Okay, that's simple. Well, the elders don't care about make them. How do I do that? One, you have to care enough to risk going to them and saying, this is Christ's church. This isn't your church. And am I wrong when I say to you, these are the doctrines that Christianity has stood on? You have to get this through your head, that it's your battle to fight. You have a post of man. God didn't put you on this earth as if you can just wander around in this army and decide whether or not you want to be let's see, I'd like to be a frogman. No, we don't have frogmen. Okay, what do we have? Well, I'd like to be the guy who flies planes. Look at yourself. See what you're capable of. Say, what post should I have been at that I haven't manned? Maybe you're the guardian of the truth. In other words, maybe you're the person who cares about doctrine. Then speak up and guard the doctrine. That's what you do. Maybe you should have been serving the people in the church in some way. Maybe it's a hospitality kind of a thing. Then why haven't you? Well, nobody told me it was my obligation. You knew when you signed up that you were a new creature and your whole world had changed. When you're converted, everything's new. And we have rules inside this family. This is an eternal family. You happen to be right now part of an eternal family. Your citizenship, according to Philippians 3:20, is in heaven now. And what are you doing? You're acting like you're going to live here forever. I'm 71 years old. You want me to tell you that, in 50 years, I think I'll have a place in Florida, and Lois will be sweeter than she is now even. And no, look, I'm at the end of the life. So what's going to happen if I live is that I'm going to start falling down the stairs, and I'm going to start forgetting where my keys are, probably. I don't do that yet. But you're going to see that I'm going to be downhill from here, okay? That's natural. That's fine. I should have done better in my past. I haven't, but I'm going to change that now by God's grace and with His help. So I'm asking you if that's your case. If it is, I want to point you to a couple of things that ought to have been obvious to you that may not be. It's like this. If the war is to be fought, it'll be in the trenches. You one-on-one with somebody at your dinner table, your son, your daughter, your uncle, whoever it might be. You're going to try to persuade them. If I'm successful in persuading you, I'm not asking you to fight in the same kind of battle that you're probably thinking. I'm not asking you to send in emails to CNN. What I'm asking you to do is this. We have a little thing that I'll bring up once in a while. It's called Atheists Say the Darndest Thing Boot Camp. We're going to start them now. And the idea is that if you want to learn how to discuss issues, cultural and theological, with people, I'm going to lay the foundation by saying I'm not going to tell you how to win when you talk to them. I hopefully can teach you how to persuade. And if I can get you out of the win mentality and get you into the persuade mentality, you will then win. Christ will win. Okay? But if you're into this where I'm going to be the smartest guy and I'm going to do this and show them up and I'm going to do these things, that's not persuasion, and I don't have any time for it. It's a fool's errand. And I don't want you to learn to do that. So if you have an interest in apologetics, if you have an interest in the culture and its ties to atheism, because remember, that's always going to be the anchor. That's why this is called Atheists Say the Darndest Things. I let them speak for themselves, and then I try to show you what they're doing incorrectly, okay? Now, I'm going to close this section with this exhortation. I want you to think about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. If you're not familiar with him, he's a German, lived during World War II, that period, or the 30s, 1930s. He's a theologian and a pastor. I'm not going to tell you all the details of his life except to say this. He's Lutheran. He gets involved in things that are really perturbing to the Nazis. One of them is, in fact, a plot to kill Adolf Hitler. Now, he doesn't necessarily participate in it, but he's aware of this plot, and that's enough. Eventually, he'll be arrested. And I think about him. He wrote a book called The Cost of Discipleship. Some of you will be aware of it, some of you will not. I can tell you this. This is a man who will eventually be executed at Flossenburg. And when he's executed, and it comes time to die, he says, "This is the end. For me, it's the beginning of life." Think about that. This is the end. For me, it's the beginning of life. He'd been tried the day before in some makeshift, phony kind of a trial and convicted, and he's out there now to die with a few other men, actually. And you see his courage. He's 39 when he dies, and he's living for the next world because it occurred to him that that's all there is. But I think he actually lived for it the whole time. And one of the famous things in The Cost of Discipleship, as I close this section, is he uses this phrase, cheap grace. And if you remember in the beginning, I'm saying I'm accusing the church from really 1950 on, post-World War II, of selling cheap grace. Your church has it. You know how I know it? We've got all of these disciples who aren't disciples. If your church is stocked full of people who claim to be disciples of Jesus Christ, and yet they say things like, "Well, Bill, you can believe what you want, and I'll believe what I want." Not if they're contradictory, we can't do that. Not on essential matters, no. You and I can't contradict each other on essential matters. I'm sorry, whoever told you that. No. This army has certain beliefs, this army has certain regulations, and it has certain disciplines. And you'll adhere to it, or I'll know that you're a traitor to this army and you never were part of this army. Okay? You say to me, "Bill, if we did that, we won't have nearly as many people in our churches." I say, well, good. Look, if you have an army, do you want people in there who want to fight and who are trained to fight? Or do you just want a bunch of slobs off the street who are just saying, "When does this end and when does supper served?" If that's who you are, the best thing you can do is listen to me closely, hate Christianity, and get out of the church, okay? The number in a church, somewhere you guys and I included started believing that numbers in churches mattered. No, it doesn't. We need only the quality in the church to matter. Give me 12 disciples who are committed, and I can turn the world upside down. Give me 12,000 who are uncommitted, and all I'll get is a bunch of church picnics and pizza parties and arguments about what music's being played. Okay? Think about it. This is a call for you to change because I'm asking Bill Moore to change. And if you don't like that, you probably don't need to listen to these things, because next I'm going to talk about a lady who was tortured on the rack and burned at the stake. And she's the only lady who achieved that double in all of English history. So I'll be putting a heroine before you and saying this ought to be you.